want to follow up on. You characterized some of the Obama administration in foreign policy as characterized as weakness, that we didn't show strength around the globe. Is that correct?
I think it's an absence of asserting our leadership, yes, sir.
And you indicated that response to Russian aggression in eastern Ukraine was one of those indicators of that weakness. Is that correct?
That is my opinion, yes.
Right. And it seemed in the testimony that you were saying that such an aggression should be met with a proportional response that we did not show.
Well, I don't think that's exactly the way I stated it. I think what I indicated in terms of the next step was my view of, it's back to my predictability comment, that Russia is not unpredictable, that when the response to the taking of Crimea was met with, in my estimation, a response that was less than I suspect the leadership of Russia thought they would encounter, then the next move was logical to come across the eastern border of Ukraine, because it was pretty well known that there were elements in eastern Ukraine that already were sympathetic to Russia interest.
And so that might be a case then when they annexed Crimea, entered into eastern Ukraine. This is a sign of weakness because we didn't respond in a way that would deter further actions.
Working with allies in the region and obviously working with the government in Kiev, both. And
so what we did do in those cases was to put together with the Europeans a way of sanctioning them economically, but that was not sufficient in your mind to stop them from their aggressions.
Well, I think, I think you're on to a really important point around sanctions, and obviously there's been a lot of questions about sanctions, and so I think it's good to try to clarify my view on those. As I've said, sanctions are a very powerful tool. They're an important tool, and they can be used in two circumstances. One is to punish someone or country for what they've already done. The other is to intervene and cause them not to do certain things. And in this case, clearly the sanctions that were put in place in response to Crimea did not deter them from entering.
And so, is it your opinion then that our sanctions should have been much more severe, or do you think in that case there should have been a match of equal force? In other words, military action.
The latter was my response. In that situation, given the dramatic taking of Crimea, and that was a dramatic action, sanctions were going to be insufficient to deter the Russian leadership from taking the next step.
And your opinion thinks it should have been military force then?
I'm sorry?
Your opinion then is that it should have been military force? My
opinion is there should have been a show of force, a military response in defensive posture, not an offensive posture, but in defensive posture, to send the message that it stops here. It stops here. And sanctions, in my view, taken after the fact, were not going to be adequate to deter that. Now, that's my opinion. We'll never know.
Right, but you understand
how that would have played out.
You understand that if you put yourself in a defensive posture, there's an old saying that if you pull a gun, you should be prepared to use it. That could quickly escalate into a conflict, and you're going to be making decisions about whether we should have commit American troops, commit European troops. If there's a military response, obviously they weren't putting it forth in Crimea. It would have to come from someplace else. And do you understand that it seems to be that you're advocating for greater use of U.S. military power, greater U.S. military engagement in conflicts like the one we saw in Ukraine?
Senator, I'm advocating for responses that will deter and prevent of a bad actor's behavior. I would not in any way want anyone to take away the thought that I recommend that as the first action. And again, in any decision to respond with a show of force, that will be taken within the National Security Council and be fully informed by others, including Department of Defense and intelligence agencies, as to whether that would, in fact, first, can it be executed upon? Can it be effective? But looking at your other options as well. And again, I'm not dismissive of the sanctions. that
But you
should-
but you did characterize the Obama administration's decisions as